We have Trey Radel, former U.S. Congressman, radio host extraordinaire out of Florida. Seems to be a guy who has common sense until you actually engage in in-depth conversation. Trey, how are you?
Oh, come on. Hold on, brother. Real quick. Let me remove this metal pen from the back of my head. Damn, Bill Gates shooting this stuff into my veins, and now I'm magnetized. Damn.
What do you think about that? But before we get into the debate, because this person, I promise you, a Trump supporter. She believes that the election was stolen. Listen, man, you know I'm telling the truth. She believes the election was stolen. She believes in the conspiracy theories of QAnon. And this person calls herself a doctor. This is problematic for the movement of the conservative party, is it not?
Yeah, it is, but I could go anywhere in the United States and go find stupid. And they may be associated with conservatives, may be associated with liberals. And it's a problem. It's a problem on both sides, most especially when you right now doing what you're doing, you're picking the stupidest idiot out of the bunch and putting her to your millions of viewers online right now and saying, look at these people, they're the conservatives.
But see, that's the thing, Trey, she's not the stupidest.
You and I have talked before.
Trey,
I'm so far right, I meet the left.
Listen, she's not the stupidest person I can find. Yeah, but brother, she's not the stupidest person I can find. That's the one correction I would make. Okay, let's talk about critical race theory. CRT, critical race theory. I've heard some of your rants about it. I completely disagree with your analysis of it. What's your beef with race relations or critical race theory? And what's up with these lawmakers passing bills, quote unquote, banning critical race theory in K through 12 education?
So, man, where do we start with this? Let me try and rip through this real quick. I know you've got valuable time on your hands. So, first of all, when it comes to banning it, I don't even know what that means in terms of the legislation or what the exact curriculum means in school. Let me get to critical race theory and say, here I am on your network, your show, a white dude, a conservative, because you and I have talked extensively about race relations, about racism in this country, how it is pervasive through various systems, which I'll get to. But my biggest problem with this is that it is race first. It's a race first interpretation of all of our social dynamics. And I think that there are some problems with that when you start talking about a race first interpretation of problems in society and telling young people K through 12 that this is because of white supremacy. And if I'm telling your children, doctor, or young kids throughout wherever you live, if you're in Atlanta, Chicago, Los Angeles right now, that the bane of your existence, the problem that you have is because of white supremacy. I'm not even using the words white people, but unfortunately, I think that gets interpreted by young people as white people. And that begins to it adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have in this country. My second part to this is that I believe that critical race theory totally discredits merit. And what I mean by that is these cheesy ass things like hard work and going out there and earning a living and all of that. And I would also apply that now statistically to asking, how do you apply critical race theory to the success of minorities in this country, like the Jewish population, or the fact that Asian American males out-earn everyone?
So let's go back to one of your conclusions. You actually said that you believe systemic racism or institutional racism exists. So let's start there. It exists, correct? So
100%. You and I have talked about it before, right? Specifically with the criminal justice system,
right? It exists. I want to be clear. Hold on, no, Trey. I allowed you to talk, brother. It exists, which means it's a reality that students will have to face. Are you with me so far?
Sure.
Okay. Since it's a reality that students will have to face, eliminating the lesson of that reality is a problem in the preparation of that student entering into the real world. And if it is a problem, Congressman, that means we have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is. Number two, critical race theory is an advanced theoretical framework and not taught in K through 12 education. So when you look at the bills that are being passed in all of these state Republican controlled legislatures, none of these bills have the terminology critical race theory written in the bill. What they're using is critical race theory as the shiny object to get another agenda accomplished. In the bill, it actually stops teachers from being able to teach what you just described as a problem. It says that K through 12 educators cannot teach how racism in institutions play out in the American social construct. That is a problem. Teachers don't teach K through 12 education critical race theory. The vast majority of them are not trained on critical race theory. I would dare argue you don't even know what critical race theory is because nobody taught you. I was actually trained under the theory and I teach the theory at the university. It's like saying you are an expert on socialist theory, or you're an expert on the theory of leadership psychology, or you're an expert on transactional leadership. If you haven't studied these things in those theoretical frameworks, you can understand some elements of it, but you don't understand the theoretical framework of how it's applied in higher education and academia. So why are lawmakers lying to people, saying that they are in fact banning critical race theory, when the truth is, Trey, they're banning what you have said on my show is something that's wrong with America. They're banning the teaching of true history.
So let me take that from sort of back to front. If you recall, just 2 minutes ago, I started with, I don't think that lawmakers really have a definition, or school teachers or school
Republican lawmakers. Make it clear, no Democrats are signing off on this.
Listen to me, Doctor. You know that I'm the first to slam Republicans just as much as I do.
Well, go ahead and slam them, brother. Slam them right now with the show.
Whatever the hell that they can,
but Trey,
to rally their bases and garner more. But
Republican lawmakers are the only ones doing this. Slam them specifically.
There, slam, boom. I'll friggin' hit him with my magnetic powers. So listen, I talk about systemic racism and have extensively with you previously. But I think that there's a few things that I have an issue with. And hell, I'd ask you, why don't you educate me on more of the theory? But first, I would talk about the difference between systemic and systematic. And where I see that shaking out is systemic is I can draw conclusions like this. I'm Trey from the suburbs of Ohio. I got a close friend here in Florida who's also Trey from an all-black neighborhood in an area that earned a nickname of Lil Pakistan because it is horrific. The crime rates, the broken, it's terrible, right? This kid's upbringing was radically different from mine, right? Like you look at the way that we both were raised, and I realize that for part of me, my difference does come from white privilege. Again, something I know and accept. Here's my problem with that. When we talk about white supremacy or white privilege, I think that unfortunately it's often used to simply shut down somebody from even having an opinion. So it's just like mansplaining. Hey, can I talk about abortion, women's health issues, this or that? No, because you have a certain body part. No mansplaining. You can't talk about this because you have white privilege. But when we look at this bigger picture of critical race theory and white supremacy, my difference of systemic racism and systematic is that systematic is saying that whites are doing this to you every single day. And that's a freaking problem when you're teaching a young child that whites are the reason that you are living in poverty, don't have a father or mother at home, and your situation is just terrible all around.
Oh man, let me help you out here, brother. Because I do think you have a fundamental misunderstanding of critical race theory. So we've already established that critical race theory is not even taught in K through 12 education. So it is dishonest for Republicans to say they're signing legislation to ban critical race theory when the wording isn't even codified in the language of the bill. Let's talk about what you just described as systemic versus systematic. Here's what critical race theory does, and here's what an element of that theory does. It de-emphasizes the individual and it places a critical analysis on the institutional norm and how that policy or law or statute expressed itself and created bias. And the individuals who wrote them, some of them were implicitly biased or some of them had what we call hyper bias. But it doesn't matter when the policy expresses itself in a bias. I will give you an example of a policy that expresses itself in bias. The Constitution says I'm 3/5 of a man. That's what it said. That is a policy that expressed itself in bias. The Declaration of Independence called Native Americans savages. That another founding document of this country expressed itself in bias. The fact that black people could not vote, the fact that black folks had to sit at certain places in restaurants, all of those traditions of our legal system and statutory code created designs. And those designs are still here, even if you decrease significantly the number of actual racists in America. If you do not critically analyze the design of these institutional policies, you will still have unequal outcomes. That's what critical race theory suggests you analyze. It is not indoctrination. Critical race theory simply asks and poses a question. That's all it does. In order for you to analyze institutions and de-emphasize individual racists.
So all of that I'm fine with. But when you look at the definition according to two different areas here, that it is inherent that the United States inherently racist insofar as it functions, creates, maintains social, economic, political inequalities between whites and non-whites, and that whites are the perpetrators, or that it is unified by, loosely by the way, which is a little weird that they use that kind of ambiguous language, two themes: white supremacy in its social structural racism exists. Look, I think that you and I.
Where are you reading that from, Congressman? Where are you reading that from?
I've got directly from the Dictionary Britannica. The other is Wikipedia. The way that it sums up
those were written by white folks. So let me give you the real definition of critical race theory. Do you know when critical race theory was created? Do you know?
I believe that it started out in the 1960s and then was more solidified in the 1980s. And
you are correct. So basically, the 1970s is when legal scholars, most of them understanding the diversity requirement for this nation to actually have equity or equitable outcome. So this comes from a legal scholarship doctrine in the 1970s. You don't find it ironic, Trey, that a critical theory that has been around since the 1970s is all of a sudden enemy number one after Donald J. Trump said that he wanted to ban it in the federal government? You don't find that ironic, brother, that you've never talked about this before in your natural life until Donald J. Trump said something about it while he was president of the United States? And you had a problem with a statement about America being inherently racist. Now that's actually something I agree with. I believe America is inherently racist based on the understanding of inheritance, which is the etymology of the word inherently. Inheritance means what you have been given by way of tradition or lineage. That's what inheritance means. We agree to that, correct?
Yes, I'm with you on all of this. Go ahead.
Okay, so you with me on that. The inheritance of this nation goes back to the foundation of the country. And the foundation of the country was rooted in the ideology that white people of means, influence, and money could own black people in the United States. So when we say America is inherently racist, that means America inherited the racism from the formation of the country. You don't get away from that inheritance in the United States of America, and that is the inheritance we are fighting against every day. It is a bad inheritance.
Where does this end up? Like what, okay. So look, you and I could sit here and talk about race all day, and I think you know where I stand. I'm a white dude from Ohio that speaks 3 languages, one of them Spanish. I didn't go travel through Latin America because I hate brown people. I love culture, I love people. But when I keep hearing over and over, you can't have opinions on this because of white privilege. You've inherited racism.
I'm not saying that, brother.
I know that.
I'm not saying that. I brought you on the show. Let me tell you what it ends up, where it should end up. A critical analysis of the policies and making sure we create policies that encourage diversity, that speak to the melting pot tradition of what this nation can be. That is how you change it. But you don't get there if you're teaching children that there's no problem with institutions that they are about to connect with. My second doctorate degree is in how institutional racism is inside of higher education. You don't get away from it. How are we not preparing K through 12 students? And remember, they're not learning critical race theory. But if you're not even teaching the reality of the inheritance of this country, which is steeped in racism and bigotry and slavery, if you're not teaching that, then you provide or you create students that provide no remedy for it moving forward. And the other part is this, Trey. and this is what's dangerous, man. If we are creating laws to say K through 12 educators can no longer teach racism in a particular context, do you know how many school teachers I can find on YouTube right now who were caught teaching that Hitler was actually a good person? Do you know how many school teachers were caught teaching that white supremacy was a legitimate mainstream idea, or that black people's brains were smaller than white people's brains? We have those educators who are on record. Not one damn state legislature passed a law saying stop teaching that. Not one. Explain that to me.
Dr. Richey, look, where you've taken this to next, and I know that you're limited on time, is what I would love to come on another time and talk with you about, debate with you about, is where government fits into this. Because you know where we are definitely going to be very separate on is how government takes a role in our lives to institute equality, because that becomes a major problem because of systemic racism perpetrated by the federal government decade after decade. Democratic cities by Democratic mayors who have absolutely crapped all over their public school systems, and they are the worst in the country. That's systemic racism.
Okay, all right, let me go ahead and throw in some real statistics since you threw Democratic mayors and Democratic cities. The 7 out of the 8 poorest states in the United States of America but let me explain, are actually controlled by Republicans. The worst educational systems in the United States of America are under Republican leadership. I just want to make sure I provide that for context. I will have you back on the show, Congressman Radel. I appreciate you joining me on Indisputable. All right.
Oh, while we may disagree, I really love being with you, bud.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Always lively with former Congressman Trey Radel.